COVID was this crisis that got us all locked in our homes for months, and they kept telling us it was all about the data and also that they knew how best to keep us safe. Problem the authorities, politicians, the media have is now we've seen the results of a lot of what has gone on here in the fight against COVID, and I just want to take a moment to deep dive into that with our friend Avik Roy. He's the founder of the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, and he's been crunching all the numbers. Avik, great to have you back, my friend.
Hey, Buck, how are you?
Tell me this. What happened? I mean, you wrote this piece about nursing homes, specifically in Forbes, and I've been talking about how in New York City and New York State as well, this just seems unforgivable. We were being told about how deadly and horrible this virus was, and it was deadly and horrible, mostly, almost entirely, for seniors. And in senior homes in New York, it was awful. You've done an after-action report on this. What happened to our nursing homes?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, let's just say you're right. 80% of the people who've died of COVID-19 are elderly, and 42% of all people in America who've died of COVID-19, those deaths have occurred in 0.6% of the population. Vulnerable seniors who live in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And those are facilities, just so we get the terminology right for your listeners, those are facilities where seniors live when they need help with activities of daily living. So if you need help taking a shower or making breakfast or getting dressed in the morning, then you might be in an assisted living facility or a nursing home. And you're in a nursing home, that's the most serious kind of assisted living facility, if you need 24/7 medical supervision. So these are people who are already in poor health status, and they're already elderly, of course, and those two things are a lethal combination when it comes to COVID-19, which makes it all the more remarkable that states like New York and New Jersey and Michigan forced nursing homes to accept or lose their licenses.
What was the rationalization at the time behind that, Avik? Well, how could anyone think that taking COVID patients who were seniors from hospitals, putting them into nursing homes, was anything other than disastrous? I mean, it's almost like someone arrived at a fire, and to help put it out, they thought, yeah, let's throw gasoline on it.
You're absolutely right. Now, the rationale at the time was, people were seeing those images out of Italy with the hospitals being overrun. And the thought of people like Andrew Cuomo was, well, we don't want Italy here. And the way we're going to prevent Italy from happening here is we're going to get those COVID patients out of the hospital as quickly as possible so the hospital doesn't get overrun with the coronavirus. The problem is, by forcing those nursing homes to take on the COVID patients, you basically lit the nursing homes on fire and sent even more people to the hospital. So New York and New York City would have had much less severe outbreaks if, instead of working on protecting only the hospitals, New York and New Jersey and Connecticut had worked on protecting the nursing homes, because then you would have had fewer patients coming to you in the hospital with severe illness.
Speaking of Avik Roy, founder of the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, Avik also went to medical school, which I always find very impressive. I know you didn't practice, but do have an MD. So tell me this, my friend, what are the lessons learned now in terms of our just overall response to the COVID-19 crisis? Like what did we not know that we should have known at the time and that we should do differently, other than obviously with this nursing home fiasco, which everyone now understands, I think, is exactly what it was. What else should we think of differently?
Well, first of all, Buck, it's really important to understand that we actually had a lot of this information in March, and we didn't use it because we knew it was happening in China. We knew it was happening in Italy and other parts of Europe. We saw some of these trends around the fact that COVID overwhelmingly affects the elderly, and we didn't look at the evidence. What we did instead is outsource our thinking to a bunch of public health and epidemiology specialists who had been trained, who'd cut their teeth solely on flu pandemics, influenza. And yes, influenza does affect the young. It does affect children. And so in influenza pandemics, it makes sense sometimes to close the schools, to shut down the economy for a very rare version of influenza. You could justify that for something like influenza, but COVID's a different disease, and the people who are making decisions or advising the people making decisions said, no, 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 we've got to protect every single person, even if they're at infinitesimal risk of dying of COVID-19. So that's problem number one, is that we didn't look at the evidence and didn't take it seriously and didn't target the economic lockdown to where it was really needed. And we didn't learn from where that evidence was. We said, no, just trust the experts and everything will be fine. And no dissent from so-called expertise was warranted, when in fact the experts were wrong. They were guessing. And I think that's where we have to start. We have to start with some humility every time we get into one of these situations of what we know and what we don't know. Instead, there were a lot of people pretending that they knew more than they actually did.
Ovik, also, what can you tell us about where we are now with states that were part of what you consider the early vanguard of reopening that we've seen across the country? I read the headlines and the news outlets about how there was human sacrifice going on in Florida, and that Texas was heading for disaster, and that Georgia was going to be, sacrificing grandmothers on the altar of people's 401ks. I mean, all this hyperbole and nonsense. What have we seen from places that have reopened?
None of that. We have not seen death cults. We've not seen human sacrifice. We are not recreating the Aztec civilization or whatever. Instead, we're seeing the economy slowly come back. We're seeing deaths and hospitalizations continuing to decline. That's happened in Florida. That's happened in Texas. That's happened in pretty much all the states that have reopened and resisted the calls from the left in particular, but also the center left to keep things closed. So again, all that goes to show that I want to see where the humility is, right? It's one thing, like we all can be wrong. I can say for myself, like when I saw those pictures out of Italy, I said, yeah, okay, I guess we should lock down because we don't want to be Italy. But it became very clear very quickly that that we weren't going to be Italy and that the situation on the ground was very different. And yet you have some people just dug in saying, you know what, I don't care what the data shows. If I can protect one life, we need to shut down the entire economy. And that makes absolutely no sense because there are lives that we're going to lose because of poverty, because of unemployment, because people can't see their doctor.
Ovik, what do you think the response is going to be if we see a resurgence? And I spoke to a doctor yesterday who said that based on other coronavirus data, meaning other versions of the coronavirus, strains of it that are out there, there's not just a seasonality, but also often a mutation away from dangerous aspects of the virus that will occur over a period of time. But assuming that we have a second, so he doesn't think there's going to be a second wave, the likes of which would bring us to have this conversation on a national level. But if we do see some dangerous level of resurgence, do you think that people are going to look at the data and everything that we've seen and want another lockdown? The president promised me face to face in the Oval Office, we will not do that, but might not just be up to him. What do you think?
Well, I want to echo what I think I heard your expert say, which is based on what we know about other coronaviruses, there shouldn't be a second wave.
Right.
All this talk about second waves happen with influenza. Again, the whole public health establishment is in love with influenza, and that's the only thing they can think about. Coronaviruses are different from influenza viruses. And if you look at the original SARS-CoV-1 that affected the Pacific Rim in 2003, there wasn't a second wave. There was one wave. It peaked in, I believe, April of 2003, and then it slowly faded away. And that was it. And there were people who were worried about a second wave. Those countries, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, they were all on guard for a second wave, but that second wave never happened. And so I'm optimistic, of course, we never know for sure, but I'm optimistic that we won't have a second wave and that as September, October rolls around, we will realize even more than we do today that we massively overreacted to this crisis.
Any thoughts, Ovik, before we let you go on where you think the economy goes from here? I mean, I know you cover a lot of angles, but you're also a guy that watches the markets. What happens now?
Well, the markets is a whole separate thing because the Federal Reserve has plowed $6 trillion into the markets. So we've seen this surge where certain sectors are trading well above where they traded in early March, which doesn't make any sense on the fundamentals. It's a combination of euphoria and the Federal Reserve. So I don't know if you could read a lot into that. But what you can say is that in general, the economy should recover. Some sectors more than others, right? I think it's going to take a while for nursing homes to restructure themselves in response to this crisis to make sure they really can control infections in the future. What are we going to do with air travel? I mean, I think it's going to take longer for people to feel comfortable getting on airplanes, and certainly en masse at the levels we had before. But everyday life, people going to work, I think that is going to rebound in the next several months, and I'm reasonably optimistic about that.
Avik Roy, everybody, the super smart dude. You should be checking out what he's writing and what he's up to over at the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, freeop.org, and look for his columns in Forbes as well. Avik, thanks so much for making the time for us, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy.
They all know those people coming out of the woods and the fields in Charlottesville carrying torches and Nazi flags and Confederate flags, their veins bulging with hatred, going after Jews first and then blacks. And when that young woman was killed, spoke to her mom, what happened? The president's asked to come and he said there are fine people on both sides. No president's ever said that.
Joe Biden's a liar. Again, notice this was just yesterday. This happened after I said to you, what did we talk about yesterday in the show? I said one of the ways that they inflame issues of race while Trump is president, one of the go-to, you'll always hear this, they always will take it back. It's like, home base for, why Trump is such a racist. This is where they'll always set up the argument, is the Charlottesville, tiki torch mob. They'll always say this. It is a lie. There is video. There is a transcript. The president was not. They can misconstrue what he said to suggest this, but he specified in the same speech at the same time, just to be clear, I'm not saying there are good people on both sides of the tiki torch neo-Nazi thing. I'm saying there are good people on both sides of the historical monument debate. He made it absolutely crystal clear. But all they do is leave off that. It's not even it's not a correction. It's just a clarification of what had been said moments ago. Like if I say to you, we need a crackdown on people in New York running around at night. And then I said, and what I'm talking about here are those who are breaking the law and looting. I mean, you could suggest that I'm saying, well, he's talking about a crackdown on peaceful protesters. That guy's a fascist. That's horrible. Well, no. I've explained what I'm saying. You're just editing and falsifying my message and my intent, right? That's exactly what they do to Trump. And Biden himself, that contemptible third-tier intellect fraud. This is what he's doing. And it's amazing to me because I just brought up with you yesterday, this is what they lie about. This is what they'll say. Oh, Trump said there were good people on both sides of this. This is their go-to. They can't help themselves. This is what they'll always fall back on. And I'll look at them. And what's amazing, and I've had this experience. I had this experience when I was working at the Hill in D.C. with, I will say, some people that I was working with who were Democrats. And I looked at them. I said, let's do this. Let's go through this exercise together. I will pull up the transcript of his remarks from the day in question in Charlottesville. And I want you to read that and then look me in the eyes and tell me that you think that he was saying that the Nazis there were good people on both sides and referring to the neo-Nazis. And they won't do it. Nope. He lied. Or rather, he said it. You're wrong. Well, no, we have a record here. We have evidence. We have fact. Do you want fact or do you want fiction? The truth is the left wants the fiction. The fiction is more useful to them. Please don't take my word for it. Go Google it. I've done it numerous times myself, just to be absolutely crystal clear. No person who understands the English language would read what Trump said or watch it on video, but you got to watch the whole thing and come away from that thinking that he was saying. And also think about what the president's going to say that the neo-Nazis are good people. He doesn't believe that. He doesn't. They can try to. He doesn't believe that. And he also would never say that. It's a categorically, jaw-droppingly stupid thing to say. So he didn't say it. But they keep repeating it. Biden repeat. And do you think anyone in the press is going to call him out for this? Biden's a lie. What he did is a lie. And that's a real lie. That's a slap at his political opponent's character and decency and integrity at a time when the country is reeling, when we're in a situation of real gravity. And he's undermining the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. Joe Biden is, look, he's contemptible. Not every Democrat, I don't find every Democrat contemptible in politics. There are some Democrats who I disagree with. I think they're wrong, but I don't think they're bad people. You know, and now if I start to name some, they'll go, oh, Buck, that guy's terrible. But, you know, Andrew Yang is not a contemptible person. He's a guy with different ideas. We see things differently. But he's not somebody who's unworthy of public trust and a platform of public debate. There are other Democrats, too. He's just one who comes to mind. In fact, Delaney from Maryland, who was running for president, he's a... See, I can do this. The left will never do this with Republicans, but they're all evil. They're all Trump-supporting fascists and, you know, whatever. Delaney from Maryland, you know, he's, on some stuff he's wrong, but he's not completely insane. I've had reasonable conversations with Congressman Delaney. He was also running for president of the Democrat ticket. He can make sense. He's a smart guy. He made his own money. He's run a business. You know, there are Democrats that are not crazy. But Joe Biden, and when I say not crazy, also that just aren't people of no moral character or integrity. But Joe Biden is not one of them. Joe Biden is an empty suit, a career politician, a classic anything for... He's really just a narcissist pretending to be a public servant. And here's his idea for how we should have the cops handle it. Just in case you're wondering what kind of level of expertise Joe Biden brings to the situation, here's what old man Biden down in the basement has to say about what our cops should do when protesters are running at them and attacking them. And play 8.
And the idea that instead of standing there and teaching a cop when there's an unarmed person coming at him with a knife or something to shoot him in the leg instead of in the heart is a very different thing. There's a lot of different things that can change. Police will change. The police force, what we'll do is, we'll teach cops that when someone's coming at them with a knife, don't shoot them in the heart, shoot them in the leg. Oh, really? Is that Joe Biden's advice when someone's making a move on you with a knife? Because that officer is very likely to die. Most officers carry 9mm sidearms. You shoot somebody in the leg who's running at you, whose adrenaline is pumping, and they've got an edged weapon in their hands. Does Joe Biden even know that if you have somebody within 20 feet, most people, including people with some level of training, who have a sidearm holstered and have an individual within 20 feet proximity of them who has an edged weapon or just wants to hit you with a club or a fist or whatever, they will close that gap and strike you before you can get around on the target, before you can actually stop the threat. Does Joe Biden? No, Joe Biden doesn't know anything. The guy, it's just all talking points and whatever he's got to say and whatever the staff hands him, and he's a figurehead. But shoot them in the leg, Joe Biden says. I mean, this is what you would expect if you just pulled some rando off the street and said, hey, what do you think we should do about police force? Oh, well, no, actually, and that's not even fair. A random person would have more intelligent things to say than Joe Biden. Joe Biden is below average intelligence on a whole range of issues. And police is one of them. And also this pretense that Joe Biden cares so much about the minority community and is going to do so much for the minority community. We all know that's a lie. Well, I do have an update for you here on the mayhem last night. In case you might have thought, well, is Buck, could he be exaggerating a little bit, or was it really that bad? Oh, no. Governor Cuomo himself recognized that it was terrible. What do I mean by terrible? I mean the law enforcement of the city of New York did not do their job at all. What do I mean not at all? I mean, they didn't really show up and do the things that they're paid to do because the mayor is the dumbest person on planet Earth. What do I mean by planet Earth? Planet Earth is a large sphere, not in fact a circle. It's three-dimensional. Okay. Here's what Cuomo has to say about what happened last night in New York. People, the NYPD and the mayor did not do their job last night. I believe that. Second, you have 38,000 NYPD people.
It is the largest police department in the United States of America. Use 38,000 people and protect property. Use the police, protect property and people. Look at the videos. It was a disgrace.
It was indeed a disgrace. Oh! So it looks like Cuomo realized that everything that I'm telling you here is so true that even he can't admit it. An embarrassment for the city of New York, and he's the governor for the city in that it is in his state. So guess what? He doesn't escape all the blame on this one either. But de Blasio should be recalled. I mean, de Blasio is a menace to public safety as mayor. He really is. And with that, roll call. Hit it.
Time for roll call.
Now, I'm just going to put this out there. I can't prove it one way or the other, but I'm just wondering, Producer Mark, if this continues, what are the chances that you throw on a mask and a cape and the Producer Mark Crusader takes to the streets to clean up Gotham?
I wasn't expecting the Batman reference. I was going to say, isn't that Captain America's job or the Avengers or something?
Either one.
Batman could take it, though. I guess New York technically is Gotham City. I personally will not do that. I have no superpowers.
That's, so you say exactly what we would expect a superhero to tell us.
I have the superpower of being a great executive producer of the Buck Sexton Show.
That's true. The man knows his skill set. That is accurate. All right. Well, I mean, I was just thinking last night, what could I do to be helpful? And I realized, stay home, because getting in the midst of the mob violence would just be bad for everybody. But man, it really did feel a little bit like I remember I've seen, The Purge I've mentioned a few times, but also in the Batman Begins movie, when Arkham Asylum, everyone's kind of like let loose on the streets. That's kind of what it felt like here a little bit.
Or wasn't it in The Dark Knight Rises when they trap all the police underground and it's mayhem in Gotham? Yeah.
Yeah, same idea. It's the same idea. It's like the Batman story made real here. All right. Let's. Do you watch anything fun last night?
No. I
No?
played FIFA.
Oh, are you good at FIFA?
I'm pretty good. I hate soccer as a sport, but I love the video game.
I used to be. I played too. I had to give up FIFA because I got too good at FIFA, and then I started to question my life choices. So about 10 years ago, I was playing a lot of FIFA on PlayStation, and then I was like, I need to stop this, because I got into. There were like 10 levels for online play, and I got into. Maybe it was only the top of the second tier, but I was almost in the first tier of the 10 tiers of online global tournaments for FIFA.
I mean, you can make money on that nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, it was just for bragging rights. Yeah, that's right. Cristiano Ronaldo in your face.
And you have to pay for PlayStation Online now. Back in the day, you didn't.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, it was all free. It was just for bragging rights.
Yeah. Now you have to pay for PlayStation Network. Pay for PlayStation Network, yeah.
My favorite thing also was back in the day, I used to play online this game Counter-Strike, which is like a counterterrorism first-person shooter game. And in college, we used to play this. But you could also play globally online. It was always fun because people would wear headsets, and you could and the audio quality was always really bad, but you could hear it, so people could talk back to you. And it was great when you'd go up and you'd knife somebody, you'd take them out with a sniper rifle at distance, and then you hear them like, that was cheap shot. You're like, I just realized I'm playing like a 12-year-old here. In Counter-Strike, I just lit up a kid in grammar school. I didn't even realize. So
anyway. I mean, that's basically what's that popular game everyone's playing now?
Oh, Fortnite. I haven't played that.
That's basically that. I haven't played it either, but it's the same concept.
Yeah. But also, then it's really sad when you'd have that same 10-year-old like 5 minutes later, take you out with the silenced Uzi, and all of a sudden he's just like noob, calling you a noob. That hurts, man. It burns when you get called a noob in these games.
So basically, you're admitting on the air that you got bullied by 12-year-olds a long time ago.
I mean, in Counter-Strike sometimes, but, that's just because they were using cheat codes. Okay. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. TeamBuck@iHeartMedia.com is the email. Send us Facebook messages. Send us things. Producer Mark, do we have a fun show announcement yet, by the way? I believe you have some. I have the Malta Podcast as homework. Do you have your homework done yet?
I don't, because I'm waiting on you to do something.
That sounds right. Okay,
Yeah.
well, remind me after the show, not on the air, so I can do the thing that you need me to do so we can make the announcement about
I
the thing
planned
that
on
you're
it, but
doing,
you brought it
that
up,
the
so-
audience is going to like, by the way.
I plan on telling you these things after the show, and then you publicly bring it up, so I have to publicly shame you.
We have no secrets from Team Buck. They're allowed to know all the things. Well, at least most of the things. Not the salty language off air. Okay, here we go. Ian, first up. Hey, Buck, like you, I too am an elder millennial. I used to be a member of the Blaze post-Buck, and years ago, I heard Pat and Keith mention your show and playfully knock the name Freedom Hut, so I decided to give you a listen to see what all the fuss was about. Well, I've been listening to you daily ever since. I must say I've never been proud of any one radio host or podcaster, but the progress you've made since first tuning in instills in me a sense of pride. I was so excited about your trip to the White House, then POTUS called into the show, and I nearly lost my mind. I just had to tell my wife about it, and like any good wife would, she chuckled and called me a nerd. Anyway, I used to listen to Rush, a man I'll always admire, but I never felt as connected to him as my folks were. You, however, are the voice of a generation, my political spirit animal, and I just wanted to say how much I appreciate your insight, most especially during these uncertain times. Congrats on your success, and shields high, my friend. Well, Ian, thank you so much. That's really kind. I don't know what else to say. I'm humbled, and we're always working on it here and trying to do the best show we can. And the fact that we've been able to grow as fast as we have and have as many people listening across the country and pick up so many wonderful affiliates for the show, look, we're very grateful, and I really am grateful about it. I feel like every day I get to do this is a day that I have a job that I love instead of what I've had to do sometimes in the past, which is a job where I just had to pay the bills. I've done both. I prefer the job that I love. But I know that it's a special thing. It's a privilege. It really is. Jake, Buck and Mark, I have a 7-year-old boy who frequently states that he can't wait to be an adult because adults can do whatever they want. It usually comes up in the context of him asking if he can have a treat of some kind and us denying him. What we vainly try to explain is that adults do have consequences too. If I eat dessert after every meal, I will not have a parent getting mad at me, but I'll get fat and maybe end up with diabetes. Fact check, as somebody who tried this experiment for 2 months, having ice cream every night, and the Snow Princess's unbelievable baked goods, including her chocolate chip cookies, which are the best I've ever had, it is true that you will get fat. I can tell you, it is true you will put on weight. So, unfortunately. Similarly, it should be no surprise that elements of our society are erupting with a sickness of the heart, following a steady diet of cheap, hyperbolic Trump delusion for almost 4 years. Jake, thank you for writing in and sharing your wisdom with the whole team. We appreciate it. Steve, hey, Buck, I'm a pre-OSS Real News Freedom Hut follower from New Hampshire. Is there such a thing as pre-OSS? Oh, no, there is. Because I did, there's a before the original Saturday Squad. That's like BBC, as in before, well, not to compare myself to Christ, but I just mean, that's before the thing. And I'm also happy that I never used this common era nonsense that people have tried to foist it on me. That's what's said now. Nope, it's not. BCAD, deal with it. Here's my thought, Steve writes in. I got COVID-19 symptoms on 5/18, consisting of fatigue, body aches, slight sore throat, and slight shortness of breath, but no fever throughout the ordeal. Got tested on 5/20. In New Hampshire, it's the deep swab nasal test, not fun, and got a positive result back on 5/23. I was told to quarantine from 10 days from onset, which means the release date was 5/28. My symptoms were light, as I've read that about 85% of cases. Then these lockdowns should have gone past 2 weeks. Now we have the great suppression of 2020 and people looking for a reason to riot. Shields high. Well, Steve, thanks for listening up in New Hampshire, and thanks for telling us about your story of dealing with, COVID-19 symptoms and where you are on that. I had the swab done when I was at the White House. I don't think mine wasn't that bad, so it must not have been the one. They stuck it way up my nose. It wasn't a good stuck up the nose, Not that, wow, that was gross, but you know what I mean. It was like up there and it hurt a little bit. It wasn't like they were just giving me a cleaning. They were inspecting. And yeah, I did not enjoy it. So I don't know if that's the deep nasal swab, but it came back negative. So that was nice. I got that going for me, which is nice. Roll call continues here. Sue is next up in the mix. Hey, Buck and producer Mark, congratulations on having the ear of the president. I think he is the only one who could fix Twitter. Imagine if he left Twitter and only posted on a conservative competitor. All his followers, the media, and a lot of others would have to follow him, giving him an immediate edge to the conservative competitor. He would have to do it soon before the election gets into high gear. Thoughts? Sue, I don't think that it would work that well. I mean, people have raised this. They'd say that everyone would switch platforms if Trump switched platforms. But, I mean, I guess a lot of people in media would have to. I don't know. Remember, Twitter is not something that a lot of Trump supporters are on. I don't know what the numbers are right now, but I remember years ago when I worked at The Blaze, our conservative audience, over 90% of them, we did a poll, and over 90% of them had and used Facebook, and it was less than 5% who were on Twitter. Now, maybe the number's grown because that was quite a few years ago, but conservatives are generally not big Twitter users, which is why you also have like left-wing nut jobs who are involved in the Russia collusion hoax who have like 700,000 Twitter followers. You're like, who the heck is this person? Like, it's because the left is predominates on Twitter. And especially with that, if you're willing to say that Trump was a Russian asset, just keep putting out crazy stuff with that every day, and people will follow you. That doesn't matter how dumb you are. It doesn't matter how wrong everything is. Just people will follow you. They won't stop. So I don't know if switching platforms would really have that intended effect, but it certainly is something that I've considered. And look, I wish that there was just a true platform for free speech where there was just never, as long as you didn't violate clear, letter of the law, and I mean the law. You can't say, I'm going to go to this person's house and commit a violent act against them in 5 minutes. I mean, there are things that you can't, doxing people, putting up personal information on there. There's some, although I'm not even sure that's really a criminal statute thing. That's a terms of service thing. So maybe that wouldn't even count. Certainly swatting people would count. I mean, there are things that we all could agree are illegal and must be illegal. And this then gets into, if a mafia don yells out to his attack dogs, kill, and the dogs kill somebody, the person's guilty of murder. It's not, that's my speech, right? We don't have to get into absurd examples. We all know this. There are some places where there are going to be speech restrictions, but it's really it's very straightforward. Content neutrality is all we're looking for. And if there are going to be rules of the road, that they're equally enforced and that they are clear and understandable by all parties. I've had my tweet, which the president of the United States retweeted, about how this will not end until the good guys are willing to use overwhelming force against the bad guys, which is true, by the way. And that tweet, according to Twitter, last time I checked, has been seen over 20 million times. So apparently made an impression. But that tweet has been reported by a lot of people trying to get me thrown off of Twitter. How is that? This is what police do. When riot police show up, they are using force. It's the good guys using force against the bad guys. When we're talking about looters and people engaged in a riot, those are the bad guys, the good guys. And they show up with batons and shields and everything so that they have more force. Why do we have not one cop show up when there's 100 looters and say, excuse me, everybody, because they're not going to listen to them? So what I said is a basic statement of fact, but there are still people out there who, they don't accept facts, they don't accept reality, and they think that they should be able to report me for that. And I should get kicked off of Twitter for that. And I keep saying this, you've been reported. And they say, to Twitter's credit, although this is an obvious one, they say, we did not find a violation of our terms of service. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you're not saying that when I say something that the president of the United States shares with his 80 million followers, it's a violation of your terms of service. Michael, hey, Buck, I'm here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Antifa came to town for a protest/riot. Those who showed up alone were escorted to their vehicles to leave without the weapons they brought. With hundreds of Second Amendment supporters on our streets to meet the others, they packed up their 6 or so Mercedes panel vans and left. Our police intercepted some vans and found bricks being stashed for future use. No harm was done. Peaceful night here in North Idaho. Suspected protest the rest of the week. Shields are high and mighty. Yeah, Michael, sounds like it. Sounds like you all did a good job over there. Ted. Hey, Buck and Mark. I was listening to Monday's show and I have to disagree with you. You said Trump is not doing enough. I personally think this toxic situation, the local and state governments are to play a larger role in quashing this decay of society with the help of the National Guard. I no longer live in the city, but I do know that I'll never go back. Seems people have zero respect for one another, and I'm social distancing. Anyway, just my opinion. I don't want Trump to step in the bad stuff. Be safe, guys. Shields way high. Well, Ted, I mean, look, you're completely entitled to your opinion, and thank you for writing in. But after I said all that, the president went out and said he's going to do a lot more. So I think the president realized he had more stuff he had to do because that's why he did it. I'm not blaming the president in any way for what's going on across the country, but we needed him to step up, and he said that he was stepping up. So I think mission accomplished. Buck gets results. Tell somebody about the Buck Sexton Show. Pass the buck. It's on Spotify, the iHeart app, the Apple Podcast Store. Until tomorrow, shields high.